We are live here on the Cover 2 podcast, also on Jared Smith Facebook Live. A little late getting to the party because we were trying to figure this out, but nonetheless, we are live here on OC Rock Radio. We are live here on Facebook Live. We'll try to get each other into the shot as much as we possibly can, but yes, we're going live on two different things today for the first time over 2019. A little bit of changes. I'm Nick Nenad, if you do not know.
I'm Jared Smith. First,
obviously, you should know that's Jared Smith. Yes,
first behind the scenes look
exactly.
Of the layer.
This is the studio for you watching on the Facebook Live right now, as well as YouTube. As you can see, we got all our music right here. We have our little recording device at my phone, and obviously I'm going to be on my computer most of my time because I have a lot of my notes on here. But on the Cover 2 podcast today, we are going to be talking about the NFL, of course.
What up, Alex?
Exactly. What up, Alex Silva? Shout out to Alex Silva. He's been on the show before. We're going to be talking about the NFL playoffs, the divisional round, four more games, two blowouts, two good games, and then we're going to be a little bit later talking about the conference championship games. And it kind of ended up being the two matchups that most football fans wanted, except for maybe Jared here, who wanted his Cowboys in. So unfortunately, the Dallas Cowboys did not pass the Los Angeles Rams this weekend. They were unable to defeat them, losing 30-22. So we are going to start the podcast talking about that. The Rams were able to literally run all over the Dallas Cowboys defense uncharacteristically. And Jared, I'll give you the first shots today. What did you think about the Cowboys' performance, and what could they have done differently to win that ballgame?
I don't know if they could have done much differently because they just defensively, going into the game, it was like, okay, this defense is legit. They are going to be able to control the Rams' offense, especially from the running perspective. I mean, the Cowboys' front seven was dominant. And it's not that they're big and physical, it's that they're very fast and they run sideline to sideline. And you really haven't seen this Cowboys defense get pushed over like they did. I mean, two Rams running backs rushing both for over 100 yards.
You're not good.
I don't remember the last time the Cowboys have let an opponent do that. So really, from the get-go, the Rams kind of have the Cowboys number. Now, the Cowboys jumped out to a 7-3 lead, right?
Yeah.
Amari Cooper gets a pass from Dak Prescott and scores a touchdown, and things are looking good early. And then all of a sudden, the Rams start to, in my opinion, I think they had a completely different game plan from what they had in the entire regular season. They were doing like jet sweep formation almost every single play, misdirection, trying to get the Cowboys confused, and I think it worked. Because it's one thing to line up with one running back in the backfield and Jared Goff snaps the ball and just hands it to Todd Gurley. But when you have Robert Woods or any of the other receivers, Brandon Cooks, running in motion, it forces the defense to react to that. Your eyes are going to move, right? And then Jared Goff can either fake the sweep and hand it to the running back, or he can just quickly hand the ball to the man that's doing the sweep and then fake it to the running back. So I think the Cowboys were caught off guard by that. And, you know, I mean, especially in the first half, but even in the second half when they had an opportunity to make adjustments, it just didn't seem like they made the right adjustments. And the Rams, with Todd Gurley and C.J. Anderson, of all people, ran all over them.
Yeah, no, C.J. Anderson, 23 carries, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Who would have guessed that?
Yeah.
And Todd Gurley, also 16 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown as well. He wasn't a slouch in this game either. Jared Goff did just enough, under 200 yards, but very consistent, and he didn't need to do much except for the big first down that essentially won them the game later in the ball game. Another big thing, the Rams defense stepped up today. The Dallas Cowboys rush game only had 50 total yards. So the rushing game period for Dallas, meaning the stopping on defense and obviously the rushing, was a complete failure.
Non-existent.
Zeke only 47 yards, so 3 yards besides Zeke.
I mean, you would have thought that the situation would have been flipped. Like,
I totally agree.
If you were just looking at numbers, I think many people would have expected the Cowboys to have 150 or close to 200 yards rushing, and the Rams to maybe necessarily not have as many yards rushing as opposed to passing. The Cowboys are known for running the ball first and playing tough defense. And the Rams are, even though they can run the ball with Todd Gurley, they're really known for spreading the ball out and giving it to Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods, and they don't have Cooper Kupp, but they have the weapons on the outside to do that. And I think we really have to give credit to Sean McVay. they had that extra week off to prepare, and they came up with some different schemes that you maybe necessarily didn't see in the regular season. And as you can see, it hurt the Cowboys.
Yeah, and the Cowboys, I remember when we were talking about this, we gave the Cowboys a chance. We both thought the Rams would win, but we gave the Cowboys a chance. And the Cowboys did have a big chance. I believe it was third quarter. They had momentum. They made it 23-15, getting a 2-point conversion, making an 8-score game. They forced the Rams to punt, but then were unfortunately stuffed on fourth down, and it was Zeke who got stuffed. So nonetheless, the Cowboys did have their chances here and just were not able to do enough in this game. Dak played well. He pressured he was pressured 8 times and sacked once. As Jared here is going to fix the Facebook Live. We're a little off right now. First time using it, so there's the kinks he's going to deal with right there. But it was more of the the Rams just controlling possession. The Cowboys could have came back in this game, but because the Rams kept using the clock, running the ball, tiring out the Cowboys defense, the Rams ultimately won this game by essentially running out the clock, and the score showed that. It was 30-22. The Cowboys, it was only a one-possession game. They had a chance in the end, and unfortunately weren't able to do that. So it was a very good game. I'm just going to wait for Jared's going to come over here back in a second. He's fixing the Facebook Live real quick. But, another thing I wanted to mention, too, I wanted to get this off. Marcus Peters, very interesting in this game. His performance, obviously, a couple pseudo fights with Amari Cooper. He was also supposed to be on coverage, some of the bigger plays that the Cowboys had, and he was not able to cover people. He did the wrong assignment. He missed tackles. There was that famous kind of non-tackle he did in this game. So I think Marcus Peters absolutely needs to get his act together. And this goes back to the game against the Eagles where he was going into the stands and he was talking to fans and acting like he was going to fight fans. And I think this is the big this is the one problem for the Rams going into their next game against the New Orleans Saints, who we'll talk about their win in a second. But Jared, I do want to get your opinion on Marcus Peters' kind of act during this game.
Oh, well, we're having a little technical difficulties with this Facebook Live right now. It doesn't want to switch. So
here, I'll try to get it.
All right, Nick, you try this. Marcus Peters.
We're still live.
Yeah, the guy talking a lot of junk. Specifically with the defense, the Rams defense, in my opinion, they were not like the dominant defense that maybe many people would expect them to be. If you really looked at it, Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, they were playing like 7-8 yards off the ball almost the entire time. Like, if Dak Prescott really wanted to, he could have just thrown the ball to Amari Cooper right when he snapped it, every single time. I mean, Wade Phillips in this defense, they were basically daring the Cowboys to throw the ball. They were stacking the box and saying, we will give you 5, 6, 7 yards. What we won't give you is the deep ball, and what we won't allow you to do is run the ball with Zeke Elliott. As you can see, the Cowboys only have less than 50 yards. As I see Nick over here smiling.
It's just not, yeah.
It's not going. People, we might have to close this out.
We'll have to close out Facebook Live.
And come back in, as my phone is not cooperating with us right now. So we will be right back with Facebook Live.
Yes, so we'll be right back with Facebook Live. We still are live here on OC Rock Radio and on YouTube as well. But we'll fix that in a second. For some reason, the screen would not rotate, so we were unable to have a good picture for that. So we will go with our second segment live on Facebook Live back to it. We'll put as much as we can on that as far as that until the camera kind of started messing up. But live radio right there. So you were saying about Marcus Peters. Do you think that's actually a big problem for the Rams, or do you think he'll be able to kind of temper it enough, knowing that he wants to go beat the Saints? We've seen the quotes before. He wants to meet Sean Payton again after he kind of had some comments about the Rams when they beat them earlier this season. Do you think Peters' ego will actually affect the Rams in this one?
I think it will. Listen, he got what he wanted, right? Because the last time that these two teams matched up, in the Saints and the Rams, obviously the Saints won that game, and after the game, reporters were speaking to Marcus Peters and asking him some questions, and he was obviously very, very heated, right? And he said, and I can't say quote and verbatim what he said on these airways right now, but basically Marcus Peters said, bring the noise again. I can't wait to play the Saints again. So guess what? He gets that opportunity. He's going to get that rematch. Now, are the Rams going to pair him up with Michael Thomas like they did before? Hell no. Because if they do that, then the Rams probably lose again, right? The great thing is Aqib Talib is back for this conference championship game. He was not in that Week 11 matchup the first time he was injured. So that is a huge factor for the Rams that they have their best cornerback back in the lineup. Now, I think the Rams like to keep their corners on one side of the ball. They're not going to necessarily travel. Obviously, Michael Thomas is the Saints' best receiver. And then you have Traquan Smith, Ted Ginn Jr., that type of thing. So I think the Rams are going to keep Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib on their sides of the field, and both cornerbacks are going to get their opportunities to go up against Michael Thomas.
Yeah, no, that next game will be interesting. We'll analyze that more at the end of the podcast when we're analyzing the conference championship games. But should be interesting. We're going to move on in a second. But any last words on the Cowboys? Obviously, great season for them. Adding Amari Cooper did end up kind of being the difference maker to get them this far in the playoffs. They did win a playoff game this year. And this game, they just, they lost. There was a better game plan by the Rams. I don't think the Cowboys were a bad team. They didn't get blown out like the Colts and the Chargers did this weekend. So they have that on their knock. They were probably in the best game of the whole weekend. But any last words on the Cowboys real quick? They are your team.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say for this team is they almost got blown out in this game. I mean, they were down 15 at one point, and it looked like things were starting to slip away. I will say that this team did not give up. They showed a lot of fight, and the thing that I'm most impressed about is that the Cowboys have one of the youngest teams in the league. I believe they only have 2 or 3 players on their current roster that are over the age of 30. So the fact that, the good thing is that this team should be able to grow from this experience and only get better. So I'm looking forward to the next 2, 3, 4 years of this Cowboys team if they can keep their nucleus together and their main core of players together, which I think they will. They have a lot of players coming up on the end of their contracts. Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, DeMarcus Lawrence. So even though they're going to have a lot of cap room for this offseason, do not expect the Cowboys to go out and sign a bunch of free agents. I think they're going to try and take care of their guys in-house. So while I was obviously disappointed in the loss to the Rams, I'm excited about their future, and I think that if they can stay healthy and continue to add to this young group that they currently have, I think they will continue to be contenders for playoff spots, and as they grow and gain more experience, hopefully they'll be able to be contending for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think with that defense and their young players, and if Dak can continue to improve, they are going to be one of those top teams every single year. So I don't doubt you on that. Just do need to sign back those players, though. Can't start losing guys. Look at the Jaguars last year, had a talented team, and then kind of lost a lot of guys and weren't as good. All right, let's move on to Eagles and Saints. Now, Jerry, you may not have been happy on Saturday, but when you saw the Eagles blow this game against the Saints and you saw Alshon Jeffrey miss that ball, it must have made you feel a little bit better about the weekend. I see he's got a smile on his face. I wish we were on Facebook Live right now because we'd be able to see Jared's face right now. But so the Eagles go down to the New Orleans Saints, who are the number 1 seed in the NFC and the number 1 seed, I believe, in all of football, but I could be wrong about that. 20-14, the Eagles went up 14-0 really early in this game off a Breeze interception on the first play and just overall good defense. But New Orleans did score the last 20 points in this game, 20 unanswered points, and were able to win this game. A couple factors in this game of why the Saints won. They had an 11.5-minute drive in the third quarter that ended up in a score. The defenses both played well, even though the Saints lost Sheldon Rankins for the season. I believe it was his torn Achilles. Yeah, so that's not very good. And then it just kind of seemed like, to me, the Eagles had to play this game perfect in order to beat the Saints, and they played it perfect in the first half. But once Foles threw an interception earlier in this game when they had a 14-0 lead, it seemed like the Saints grabbed momentum and kind of had it from there on. It was just the Saints' game to lose. And they could have lost it when they kicked or missed that 52-yard field goal later in the game. They gave the ball back to Foles. And then, unfortunately, Alshon Jeffrey, with the worst missed ball I've seen in years, goes right through his hands. They were They were rolling. They were trying to score. They were in the red zone, and Jeffrey missed it, and it ended up in the Saints defender's hand, and the Saints essentially won from there. So, Jared, what were your thoughts on this game? I kind of just saw it as it was the Eagles game in the first quarter, and then kind of from then on, we were all waiting to see if the Saints would start to win the game, and that's at least how I saw it. The Eagles did not do enough on offense in this game after the first quarter.
No, they did not. And I was actually driving home from work on Sunday, so I did not get to see the beginning of this game. I came home and I saw 14-0 Eagles on top, and my jaw hit the floor.
It was shocking.
I was like,
yeah.
Whoa, what's going on? There's no way. There's no way. The Eagles, and I understand, Nick Foles and all that magic and everything, but the Eagles are in the Superdome right now against the Saints, who have had 2 weeks to prepare, and they're up 14-0 in the first quarter. Are you kidding me? So I almost had a panic attack. I seriously, oh my gosh, I almost lost it. And you know what? You have to give credit to the Eagles for coming out and playing very well. Like you mentioned, I didn't know that Drew Brees threw an interception on the very first play.
Yeah.
But you have to give the Eagles credit. I mean, listen, from the fact that the Eagles got blown out in this rematch, another rematch from earlier in the year, you had to expect that the Eagles were going to come out fired up. And
with Nick Foles, too. Different team,
and there was no way they were going to get blown out again. But on the other hand, after the first quarter, it was like, wait a minute, what happened? Like, how come the Eagles could not continue that momentum? I guess you have to give more credit to the Saints for making in-game adjustments on the fly. Mm-hmm. But for the Eagles, it's like, whoa, you guys looked so great in the first quarter, and then you guys kind of just pumped the brakes. Like, you can keep going on the gas pedal, man. There's still 3 more quarters to go. And so, really, I'm not saying that the Eagles would have won if they would have, continued to play well and not made some mistakes down the stretch. But the fact that the Saints only scored 20 points, I think that's almost a win for the Eagles defense. Going into this game, if you would have told me that the Eagles defense would have only given up 20 points, I probably would have said it was going to be the Eagles winning.
I absolutely agree.
Right? So the Saints got a little lucky with this win, right? Now, they were at home, they're in the Superdome, they have the crowd behind them, and obviously with the Jeffrey missed ball and that turned into an interception and some other key plays in the game, they were fortunate enough to win. But if the Saints were playing the obviously, I'm just throwing this out there, but if they were playing the Patriots or if they were playing the Chiefs or even the Rams or someone else who was a more dynamic offense, the Saints would have lost this game, and I don't have, I will defend that till the end.
Yeah.
So the Saints got very lucky with this win, they get to move on.
No, they escape. It was almost like I was telling people this. I was like, it's almost like ball don't lie with Jeffrey missing that ball. It's like, Cody Parkey missed that field goal. He hit the post twice. You got lucky last week. You even advanced, and then here you go. You have a chance to win against the mighty Saints. And one of the best possession receivers in the league literally has the ball go right through his hands. An interesting thing about that, too, was right before that play, or actually during that play, the Eagles kind of hurried up and tried to get a playoff before the 2-minute warning. And I think a lot of people forgot that. And the people I was watching the game with, if you're listening right now, you remember me saying this, I was baffled at why they weren't just trying to waste the clock. They weren't just trying to go into the 2-minute warning. I don't get the getting a couple seconds off the clock there. I don't understand that thinking. And I think the rushing of that play, you never know. That might affect Jeffrey's route. He might not be totally ready for the ball. I'm just giving him some reasons why he missed this ball that was so easy to catch. But that might have been a factor. And I didn't understand that thinking from Doug Peterson and Nick Foles on that play. But nonetheless, the ball should have been caught. It went through his hands and unfortunately landed right in the Saints defender's lap. And then, like I said earlier, that was pretty much the end of the game. But story of this game, it was just more of after the Eagles threw an interception, the Saints got a touchdown off that drive. It was a 12-play drive, 6 minutes long. Okay, they then were only down by 7. They ended up kicking a field goal to go into the half, 14-10. From then on, they pretty much dominated possession of the game. In the final possession numbers, the Saints owned 38 minutes of the ball, and the Eagles were 22. And most of that came after that barrage of 2 touchdowns early in the game. So pretty much the Saints, bashed the Eagles in the second half as far as the clock. And that's how you win ball games. That's how you end up winning by 6. Again, a little bit lucky on the interception late, but you kind of earn it when you take over the ball and you stop them that many times on defense. Any last thoughts on this game, or was it pretty much just Eagles kind of blew this one a little bit?
They did. Yeah, no, I mean, the Eagles blew it. They had an opportunity at the end, and going into this game, if I said this on last week's podcast as well, that if the Cowboys would have beat the Rams, I was actually rooting for the Eagles to win, because then the Cowboys would have had a home game, and it would have been the third rematch of the season with the Cowboys and Eagles. So I was actually, I obviously when the Cowboys lost, I was then rooting for the Saints. But for a minute, if the Cowboys would have won that game, I would have been rooting for the Eagles, and I would have been a little sad right now because the Cowboys would have happened to be traveling to the Superdome, and that's I guarantee
not far travel, but
not a far travel, but I guarantee you that Sean Payton had some words for his team, even though he's obviously happy that they won. I think the way that they played was not up to the Saints' standard, and listen, the Rams are a good team, but they better be prepared from the get-go. I guarantee you Drew Brees does not make the mistake of throwing a first-quarter interception like he did, and the Saints will come out way more fired up than they did last week.
I agree. And then one more thing about this game. This is likely Nick Foles' last game with Philadelphia. Doug Peterson, the head coach, reiterated that the Eagles are committed to Carson Wentz yesterday. So Foles will likely move on to another team. We can kind of discuss that a little later when the season ends and maybe who can go to, because there are a couple candidates. But great run for Nick Foles, right? The Super Bowl MVP. You don't get much better than that. And then leading them to the playoffs this year and even another playoff win. So good for him. And then we'll see. Obviously, I think the Eagles will be successful somewhat with Carson Wentz unless, there's just some drastic thing wrong with the play calling with him. All right, I wanted to get this game out of the way. I know you have Chiefs Colts there ready on your computer, but let's just get the Chargers Patriots game out of the way really quick. This was a blowout. The score doesn't look like a blowout, but it was. At one point in this game, it was 38-7 in the third quarter. So did you obviously didn't even see this game.
I was actually watching it on my phone.
You're watching it on your phone. I got you. But I'm sorry for that you had to watch that on your phone. I drove all the way out about an hour to watch this game, and woke up early, and I had to pick up my girlfriend and stuff like that to go to the game, and we got over there and wasted pretty much 3 hours watching this game because this was a complete blowout. I don't really know what to say about the Chargers for this. I thought they were potentially a Super Bowl candidate. I didn't pick them. I thought the Chiefs would end up at the beginning of the playoffs getting there. But the Chargers were kind of right there with the Patriots. And this obviously this is another Patriots masterpiece. Josh McDaniels, great game plan. Like I said, it was 38-7 at one point. Sony Michel, 130 yards, 24 carries, and 3 touchdowns rushing. Edelman, 151 yards receiving, and James White, 15 receptions, 97 yards. Another quick thing on this, the Chargers rushing. If you thought you were a Cowboys fan and you were disappointed in their rushing, Chargers 19 total yards.
19?
Of rushing. 15 came from Melvin Gordon. So he dominated the Chargers running.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so, this was not good. The Patriots absolutely outclassed the Chargers. It just seemed like the Chargers couldn't make a mistake in this game, and they made a bunch. The defense couldn't get a stop, and they couldn't get a stop. they just couldn't stop anything. And pretty much the Patriots scored on every single drive, but it seemed like one until they kind of took their pedal off the or their foot off the pedal. So, Jared, what are your thoughts on this? Was this just the Patriots being the Patriots, or is this more internal with the Chargers?
Very simple for me. Very, very simple. The Chargers are who we thought they were. And
Dennis Green. Shout out to Dennis Green.
Yeah, Dennis Green. Thank you very much for that quote. They are. And listen, I've been saying this all the time. I like Phillip Rivers, right? I don't hate the guy. I feel that he's a little too cocky at times, and I think that showed up. Listen, the Chargers are a good team, but Phillip Rivers is not the guy to get them over the hump, right? It is the stats show it. Now, at the end of the day, he threw for 331 yards and he had 3 touchdowns and only 1 interception. But guess what?
That didn't matter.
The majority of that was in the second half when they had to throw the ball, right? Because obviously the discrepancy from 51 passes to only 10 rushing attempts is not really what you want going into a football game, especially against the New England Patriots. Yeah. So when you get behind like the Chargers did, you're kind of screwed in a sense. I mean, listen, leading into this week, like there was supposed to be heavy snow, the weather conditions were supposed to be horrible. I think the Chargers got very lucky because when I turned this game on, I saw sunny skies. Now, I'm
It
sure
was
it was
great
very,
weather.
very cold.
Yeah.
I'm not discrediting that at all. But the Chargers kind of lucked out with the weather. And the fact that they didn't come out and take a little more advantage of that, I think, hurt them from the beginning. Listen, I said this as well on last week's podcast, that when you give Tom Brady and Bill Belichick 2 weeks to prepare for a team, they are almost unstoppable. Right now, obviously, I can't say completely unstoppable because they did lose to the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl. They did beat the Atlanta Falcons. They lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in last year's Super Bowl. So it's not 100% that they are going to win off of a bye. But they had a great game plan. Sony Michel, 24 carries for 129 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Hello, Chargers. Did you guys just not want to stop him? I mean, were you trying to help? I mean, I wish this was still fantasy season going on because Sony Michel had a game.
Yeah.
Right? So this was really about the Patriots' dominance and the fact that the Chargers are the Chargers and they're a good team and they have the talent and the players to get into the playoffs and make a little bit of noise. But at the end of the day, I think you do have to put a good amount of blame on Phillip Rivers. Now, he was not out there on defense, and he did not give up 41 points to the Patriots. But on the flip side, when you only score 7 points in the first half, and you're going into the fourth quarter with only 14 points, that's just flat out not good enough. Yeah. It's really not. So I have to put a lot of the blame on Phillip Rivers and this Chargers offense.
Yeah, I disagree with you a little bit on putting a lot of the blame on Rivers. I put a lot of blame on defense because they gave up 38 points in 3 quarters. But yeah, you're right. He wasn't perfect, and there was a lot of it kind of seemed like the Chargers gave up on the run really quickly. And as you can see in the stats, that's what happened. And I think Rivers is not a quarterback that's going to win you a game with his arm. He has to have some help. I mean, look back in the past. LaDainian Tomlinson was one of the reasons they were in. So Phil Rivers has never been that guy that can just take over a game like an Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees or Tom Brady. He's got to have the help from the run. When he doesn't have the help from the run, stuff like this happens, and that's what happened. But I do want to move on because we are running out of time, and this game was a blowout. So Patriots dominated the Chargers. Going into this last game, Colts versus Chiefs. This was somewhat of a blowout too. It just seemed like the Chiefs kind of were going to win this game the entire time. Chiefs offense had 433 total yards. Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Damian Williams all had rushing touchdowns in this game. I don't believe there was a passing touchdown in this game because I don't.
Andrew Luck did have one.
Well, I was talking about for the Chiefs.
For the Chiefs,
Yeah, for the
they
Chiefs.
did not. No.
No, and then time of possession, first downs, rush yards were doubled by Kansas City in this game. So that's obviously not good for the Colts. And the Kansas City Chiefs defense played great, which we haven't heard all season. That was the big thing in this one. I thought that was big, but also Andrew Luck. And it looked like there was something maybe wrong with Andrew Luck's arm, or he just was not, he's not used to the cold, which would make sense since he grew up in Texas, went to college in California, and plays in the Dome in Indianapolis. So that does make sense that he might not be used to these frigid conditions. For a big game, especially with 3 straight games on the road on their back. But it just seemed like there was something wrong with Andrew Luck, and there really was no chance in this game because Luck was not able to throw the ball down the field with consistency. What did you see from Andrew Luck in this game?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with Andrew Luck, and you're right. You can say that the weather conditions weren't the greatest, and he's not used to playing in the cold. I just have to give a lot of credit to the Chiefs defense, something that I don't think we've done all year long. Justin Houston, D. Ford, Jones, the defensive tackle. I think they were just able to disrupt Andrew Luck enough. I mean, he was 19 for 36. Those are bad numbers. Now, he barely threw for over 200 yards, but when you add in the 3 sacks that Andrew Luck took, he threw for less than 200 yards, right? So this was almost a dominant performance by this Chiefs defense. And you're right. Like the Chiefs, they're known for scoring passing touchdowns, and they had 0. And it was really a lot of the groundwork that gave them this win. But the most impressive thing was this Chiefs defense all around, from the front line to the linebackers to even the secondary. When they only gave up, T.Y. Hilton had 4 receptions for 60 yards. T.Y. Hilton is easily their best receiver. and you hold him to 60 yards. Now, he did score a touchdown, but really that touchdown was meaningless. It was in the second quarter, and it did not really turn the tide as much. So,
yeah, they were down by a lot.
Right. So for me, this is all about the Chiefs' defense in this game, and I think it's something to note, and we're obviously going to get into this later on. The Chiefs needed this type of game from their defense because going up against the Patriots next week, you need that type of momentum, especially on that side of the ball, when you have Tom Brady coming into your stadium. So I think this was obviously a huge win for them that they get to move on. And we know that the Chiefs offense will more than likely always show up. The fact that this defense has some momentum riding with them right now, I think that will carry over and help them into next week.
Yeah, I forgot there was actually a fourth rushing touchdown in this game. Darrell Williams, who I didn't know who that was before this game. He had a rushing touchdown too.
Wow.
The Indianapolis Colts rushing was only held to 87 yards. Like you said, passing was 179 total because of the sacks added. So not a good game for the Colts. We do need to go to break though. The conference championship matchups are the Chiefs and the Patriots. That game is in Kansas City. It's supposed to be horrendous conditions for that game. Frigid.
Below zero.
Below zero. Yeah, that's like that old Viking Seahawks game from a couple of years ago. And then Saints and Rams in the Superdome, a rematch of that game. Literally in a rematch of the Chiefs-Patriots game just put in Kansas City this time. So we'll see what happens, but we're going to go to break. We're going to be talking about our LA teams aren't doing that well right now. The hockey teams, basketball teams, and the baseball teams haven't done much in the offseason. So we're going to talk about that coming up next in the break. Conference championships a little bit later in the show. This is the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
If you run it, you end up punting it right back. If you don't pick up the first down, they'll throw it. Goff will run it and get it. Biggest run of his NFL career. Cowboys cannot stop the clock again. Anderson. Another first down. Down he goes, and this thing is over.
I mean, this is the most vulnerable they're ever going to be. Because Tom Brady, I watched that game. Did he look old? That's as good as I've ever seen him play. I mean, I can't remember a game he was that efficient against that kind of personnel. I mean, Kansas City this week, at home, veteran head coach, mostly healthy, great head coach, extra day to prepare. I mean, New England can't possibly 35-7 at half over the Chargers, play close to that, right? Kansas City even got a break. New England played perfect. You can't play perfect in the NFL in back-to-back weeks.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast live on OC Rock Radio and live on Jared's Facebook once again. And if you're listening on YouTube, welcome back to the show. Right now we're going to go into LA sports. The Ducks and Kings are some of the worst teams in the NHL. The Clippers and Lakers are mightily struggling in the Western Conference right now. Lakers without LeBron. Clippers just can't beat the teams they need to beat. And the Angels and Dodgers haven't made any giant moves yet, a la getting a Bryce Harper, or the Angels making giant additions, or even adding, okay players to the roster. There just hasn't been much going on. So we're going to discuss all of that right now and take a little break from football for a second. And go into this. So let's start with basketball because I think this is where the most news is going to come from. And let's start with the Lakers because you're a Lakers fan. I'm a Lakers fan. And the Lakers suck right now without LeBron James. And if you are a Laker fan that doesn't think the Lakers suck without LeBron James, well, you need to get used to it.
Open your eyes.
They're not very good. Yeah. I think the record is 3-8, 4-8, something like that. Without him, they lost to the lowly Cleveland Cavaliers the other night, who I believe had less than 10 wins before that game started. So, Jared, what's going on with the Lakers? Do they need to add another player, or do they just need to get LeBron back? What needs to happen for them to really be, considered a contender this year after when LeBron left, it just seems like they're the same old team, and with the addition of a superstar, they're just a little bit better.
Both of those things need to happen. Yeah. LeBron needs to come back as healthy as possible, and they also need to add another superstar to go along with LeBron. It's very, very simple right now. Before LeBron went out, the Lakers were in the 4th seed, which means that the playoffs started at that point, they would have had home court, right? At least for the first round. Since LeBron has been out, the Lakers have dropped to 8th place. They were in 9th, and I believe They beat Chicago, or they'd have a win. So it
Had a
bumped
win
them
last night.
technically back into the playoffs, sitting at number 8. But it's very simple. Without LeBron, this Lakers team is mediocre at best. They are the Lakers of the last 2 to 3 years where, yeah, they've got some young talent, and Kyle Kuzma is a really good player. Josh Hart is a great complimentary guy off the bench. Lonzo Ball can do his thing at certain points, but they don't have that star. They don't have that guy that you can consistently, night in and night out, say, all right, we need you to go drop 40, drop a double-double, and we need you to carry this team. I mean, when you're head coach in Luke Walton, when you have to come out and publicly challenge Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, saying that he doesn't think that they are playing hard enough, that's a problem.
That is not good.
Right?
Yeah,
I don't care how young you are. I don't care what the circumstances are. You're in the NBA. You're a professional athlete, and you are having to get called out on national television by your head coach because you guys aren't playing hard enough. To me, that right there is showing that this team doesn't have it, or maybe just doesn't want it. And LeBron James is the only way and only reason that this team will make it to the playoffs. So without him, they'll be a hovering 500 team, and they'll be on the brink of making the playoffs as at best a 7th or an 8th seed, and then they'll get bounced out in the first round by the Golden State Warriors.
Oh no, I'll tell you this: without LeBron, they're not making the playoffs. I mean, they're not. If LeBron, let's say this groin injury or whatever the injury was, extends a little bit and gets worse, and he's out for, let's say, an even more significant time, the Lakers are screwed. They're not making the playoff because they're just going to revert back to that team that was close to 30 wins last year and may have exceeded. But, with LeBron James and a lot of these veterans and no star like you were talking about, people saying Kyle Kuzma is a star. That's not true. Kyle Kuzma is not a star. He's still a young player. He's a good player, but not a star. LeBron James is a star. Anthony Davis is a star. Kawhi Leonard is a star. That's the guy. That's why people have been saying the Lakers need to add that second superstar, because when a LeBron goes down or when that other guy goes down, there's still that one dude. It's why the Thunder were always successful. If Durant went down, they still had Westbrook. And I could talk about the Warriors, but they're kind of a false. They have so many superstars they could lose 3 of them and still win games. So, with the Lakers, they just need to get LeBron back. I believe he should be coming back like next week or something like that. But it seems like the deadline keeps extending too.
Potentially.
So you never know. But losing to the Cavaliers and not winning the games that you absolutely should win, I'm okay if you lose to the Warriors. I'm okay if you lose to the Clippers. But if you're going to lose to the Cavaliers and, almost lose to the Bulls last night, that's where you have major problems. So the Lakers do need to potentially go out and try to add some more depth if they really truly want to make the playoffs this year, or really hope that LeBron is fully healthy.
Yeah, we Ryan Johnson, one of the
guests. Oh, there you go.
Guests on our show here, the Carolina Panthers fan who likes to boost up his own players, but that's for another topic. He thinks that the Lakers should trade Brandon Ingram and Josh Hart, and maybe Ball. Now, you basically, and I've said this before on this show, everyone except for LeBron James and Kyle Kuzma, those are the only 2 players that are untouchable.
I agree with that completely.
I like Brandon Ingram, and I think as he continues to grow, he will become a star. I don't think he'll be a superstar or LeBron James or Steph Curry or Kevin Durant that big, but I think he can be a star. So it would be hard for me to see him go. Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, those are like good complementary pieces, but if you have an opportunity to get an Anthony Davis or a Kevin Durant or the likes of one of those guys, sorry, Josh Hart, sorry, Lonzo Ball, it was nice knowing you, but,
take your dad somewhere else.
Exactly, basically. But like I said, Brandon Ingram, you probably have to go as well. Now, there was obviously rumors, and there's still rumors, but I think, the fire isn't as bright as it was a couple weeks ago, as far as, many people and media insiders were saying that Anthony Davis is more than likely not staying in New Orleans. He doesn't want to re-up his contract. And, if a team wants to trade for him, it would have to be right now. Those talks, I haven't really heard much of that, in the last week or so. And I'm not sure if that's because there's nothing going on, or if because teams are trying to be very secretive and don't want to leak any information as far as what they will be willing to give up. The problem for many teams right now is that Anthony Davis is under contract until the end of the 2020 season. So, you would be taking his contract on right now, and then you would basically be renting him for a year unless you were able to extend him before that contract was up.
Absolutely.
So, how do you create that cap space? Which guys are you willing to move, and how are you willing to set these puzzle pieces up to where you're, not giving up the whole farm? Because let's remember as well, it's one thing to get these stars, but what are you giving up, right? Because you still want to have something in place for when you acquire an Anthony Davis to go along with LeBron James. It can't just be LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and nobody else, right? So
ask the Pelicans about that the last couple of years.
Right, so who are you going to be able to keep and build around? Because those two stars, even though they're fantastic, they can't play 48 minutes a game for the rest of the season, right? You need some type of bench help and quality guys around you, 3-point shooters, guys that can, sit here and guard the other team's best players from time to time. So I think that's where the Lakers and some other teams are right now, trying to figure out what are we willing to give up. And then for the Pelicans, they're going to be asking for the moon, right? So this is their expectations right now. I'm sure many other teams are right here. How do they get to meet in the middle? I think that's the big question.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, and I'm sure the RKJ man Ryan Johnson will say this too, that believe, Brandon Ingram and Josh Hart and Lonzo Ball aren't like the best prospects ever, either. And Brandon Ingram's probably the top, but like Lonzo and Josh Hart are kind of just complimentary players, at least in my opinion. I'm a little harder on the Lakers than most people. I think that Kyle Kuzma is legit. I think Ingram has a chance to be a really good player, but really everybody else is just, they're going to be a sixth man or a guy off the bench or a starter on a bad team. That's kind of how I see them. And Lonzo, I could see improving, but he just has an awkward way he plays, and Josh Hart's essentially just a 3-point guy. So, we'll see what they can trade. I think there's going to be some first-round picks involved, but then really are these first-round picks even going to matter when it comes to it? They're going to be in the 30s or the high 20s.
Pick.
Yeah, so we'll see. With basketball, late first-round, second-round picks, most of them don't end up working out. You can ask the Lakers, and most of them do, but that's a rarity. So we do need to move on, though. To the Clippers, and I know there's going to be a bunch of people that say, why are you guys talking about the Clippers? Well, because they're a team here in LA that really started well and were in first place in the Western Conference when the Warriors were struggling a little bit. And now we've been making all this talk about how the Lakers suck and they're not good without LeBron James. The Clippers are one game ahead of them after all of this. And they've had 3 straight losses to the Nuggets, to the Pistons, to the Pelicans. They did win 3 games against easy opponents, but lost to the 76ers and Spurs, so it just seems like they're losing to all the good teams and beating all the bad teams, which is what you have to do, but with a lot of parity in the West, that's not going to be the best. Jared, what do the Clippers have to do? Do they need to add a star? Do they need to add more depth? Or is this just kind of a bump in the road for them? Are they a good team that's playing bad, or are they a bad team that started well? What are the Clippers?
They're a mediocre team that exceeded expectations.
Oh, he's so hard on the Clippers all the time. He's always so hard.
I'm being realistic. Look at this team right now. Tell me what superstar that you
Lou
are
Williams is a
in.
very star. I'm confident Lou Williams.
Okay, you're confident that Lou Williams can lead this team into the playoffs and beat the likes of Golden State and Denver.
Oh, no, I'm not saying they're going to be Golden State.
Okay,
I'm just saying.
My question is, what player on this team right now do you have confidence in that can lead this team into the playoffs? Like, you're telling me that if you have an opportunity to get Lou Williams, you're confident in Lou
Montrezl
Williams.
Harrell, Tobias Harris.
Stop it. You're a bandwagon fan right now, and you're being ridiculous.
Bandwagon. No, they're from LA. I can't be bandwagon.
There's no way that this nucleus of players right now is going into. They're not even beating the Spurs in a 7-game series right now.
Yeah.
It's not happening. They're a good to solid team, and they've been playing well, but as the season goes on and their schedule gets a little bit tougher, as you can see, they gave up 46 points to Anthony Davis and the Pelicans.
27 points to Julius Randle in that game, too.
Right, and the Pelicans, even though maybe the score didn't indicate it, it didn't seem like it was that close. I don't have a lot of faith in this team. I do like Doc Rivers as a coach. I think he's a great game manager, and he can game plan. And the thing that he's done so well this year is that he's put players in positions that they're normally not used to playing, and they've exceeded those expectations, right? Like I said, you have to have guys step up when you don't necessarily have a superstar that you can just throw the ball to and say, okay, go win the game for us, right? All of these guys have had to kind of take a role in that. So the Clippers should be one of the most active teams in this upcoming trade deadline. Kawhi Leonard, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis, even if there's no shot in hell at getting one of these guys, they need to make that phone call and say, what's it going to take for us to get one of these guys? Because, in my opinion, looking at this roster right now, yes, it's good enough to make the playoffs, but they're not doing anything in the playoffs. They're going to get bounced out in the first round. I think there's no question about that.
The way they've been playing lately, I agree with you on that. I don't even know if they can make the playoffs, to be honest. But I do think you're overreacting to the roster rather than watching the play of the team. Now, so you look at this right here. Like I said, they lost 3 in a row, or they lost their last 3 in a row games. Beat easy teams. So if you look at their schedule coming up, they have Utah. That's going to be tough. Then they play Golden State at home in DeMarcus Cousins' debut with the Warriors. So that's probably a loss too. That's probably a loss for most teams. So you're not too heartbroken of that. And then they play at San Antonio. So that's 3 more hard games. I think if they can pull 1 win out of those 2, they're fine. Because then after those 3 games, they have this. They have at Dallas, at Miami, at Chicago, Sacramento, Atlanta, the Lakers, and Detroit. Okay? Literally all of those games are winnable, besides maybe the Lakers if LeBron is back. So that's where the Clippers got to be. You got to weather out these next 3 games, and then they can get a lot more wins and beat the bad teams. Because if they can continue to beat the bad teams, you're right, they are going to make the playoffs. But it is about beating those good teams, and so far, they have not later in the season. They did earlier. They beat the Warriors. They were pretty much beating everybody, and now they can't beat a single good team, and they seem to just be behind in every single game. And Lou Williams and guys have to bring them back to the brink, and they're not able to win. So Clippers need to make some improvements. I agree with you. They need to go try to add some depth. Maybe not a star, because I don't think they're going to be able to negotiate that in the middle of the season. I don't think the Clippers need to do that because I think they like a lot of their young players and want to start building the team instead of just trade a bunch of them away. So whereas the Lakers they have LeBron, so you can trade a lot of those guys away, right? Clippers don't have that option. All right, let's move to baseball. Dodgers and Angels have been kind of mute this offseason. Now, obviously, the Dodgers did trade away a lot of players. Yasiel Puig, Matt Kemp, Alex Wood, and they did trade for Russell Martin, a catcher. But they're instead of adding depth to their team, I know Russell Martin was adding depth, but they did lose Grandal to the Milwaukee Brewers. They're not signing anybody. They haven't signed Bryce Harper. They haven't traded for Corey Kluber. They haven't signed a DJ LeMahieu. They're not doing much right now. And, I just think that they're losing an opportunity, and their roster is good, right? They're still a playoff roster. They're still probably the best team in the NL West, especially after the Rockies lost DJ LeMahieu to free agency to the New York Yankees. But I just think they're not doing enough after losing 2 consecutive World Series. I would see more of an urgency to at least, if Harper is saying, I'm going to wait all this long, they go, okay, well, screw it. We're going to go trade for Corey Kluber. We're going to get an all-star second baseman, DJ LeMahieu. We can add a catcher in Russell Martin, too, and the roster is good, and we're under the salary cap, and then we can trade for maybe another star at the all-star. They haven't done that, though. They've lost out on everybody. And now I'm hearing that the Padres might get Corey Kluber, and that obviously DJ LeMahieu signed with the Yankees, like I said, and we traded for Russell Martin. Right? And the Angels haven't done anything in this offseason. So, what are your thoughts on this? Are the Dodgers just kind of waiting on Harper to make a decision? Or have they waited too long and now they're not possibly going to add anybody and they're going to be kind of screwed going into the season?
I think this is a situation where you have to wait as long as it takes for Bryce Harper to basically make a decision. Bryce Harper is... Obviously, his name speaks for himself. He's a kind of a once-in-a-generation talent. Yeah. And even though
Superstar.
His last year or two with the Nationals probably wasn't on par with where he started when he began his career in the majors, exactly. He is still a talent that can change the direction of your team. So if you are the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Phillies or the Angels or any team that's been associated with the Bryce Harper sweepstakes, you basically have to sit back and say, okay, we are waiting on you. Our offer is on the table. This is what we are willing to give you. And hopefully at the end of the day, teams are saying, hopefully we have enough. I don't think you can just simply say, all right, well, you haven't taken our offer, so we're going to pull it off the table and we're going to move on, right? It's not like, I don't even know who I can compare it to, but these, even with Manny Machado, these types of guys, they, like I said, they can change the direction of your team and they can take you from, even if you are a playoff team or if you're not a playoff team, they can catapult you and elevate you to that elite status.
True. Yeah, true.
So if you're the Dodgers, yes, it's unfortunate that you maybe haven't made as many moves as you'd like, but you're possibly doing that to make sure that you have enough money to get Bryce Harper. Because say you go out and you add a couple, 2 or 3 pieces, maybe that puts a wrench, or maybe you have to exceed your money tax as far as getting Bryce Harper, and then you put yourself in bad cap situation. So if you're the Dodgers, I'm okay with him waiting. The thing is, you basically have to get Bryce Harper.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah,
because
you have to get
if you wait and you don't get him, then this offseason is a failure, right? But if you wait and you get him, then it's like, okay, maybe they knew what they were doing all along. So all these teams right now are in limbo saying, all right, no one really wants to make the next move because everyone wants to wait for that big domino to fall. I'm very surprised that it hasn't happened already. And I don't know as much about this as you do, so I want to get your opinion. Why do you think Bryce Harper has not signed with the team? Do you think he's waiting for that $400, $500 million record-breaking contract? Or do you think he's just, he's trying to say, okay, do I want to live in LA for the next 5 years, 10 years? Do I want to live in New York? Is it more of a, where do I want to set up myself and my family for the future?
You know what? I think with him, it's just that superstar mentality. We've seen it with LeBron in the past. He doesn't necessarily say where he's going to go right away, and there's not a lot of hunch until he just says it. Right? Oh, I'm going to Cleveland. I'm taking my talents to South Beach, or I'm going to the Lakers, for example. With Harper, you look at Larry Fitzgerald. He decides to retire or unretire whenever he wants. The Cardinals have to wait every offseason, and it's usually around February or March he makes his decision, but there's no actual date where that thing is going to happen. So with Harper, we have a month until pitchers and catchers report, a little over a month before spring training kind of starts. He's going to have to make his decision soon. And my dad and I were talking about this. We had a little game. We're like, they're announcing the Hall of Fame candidates or the Hall of Fame members next week. I believe it's Tuesday. So we said, okay, what happens first? The Hall of Fame members are announced, or Bryce Harper and Manny Machado's teams are announced? I honestly do think that we're going to find out before our next podcast next Wednesday where Harper and Machado go. So really? I think it's sooner than later. Machado especially, because we've been hearing the Chicago White Sox have an 8-year deal on the table. We hear that the Phillies are interested. I even heard there's some mystery teams, possibly even the Angels, which I highly doubt. I don't trust my dad's opinion on that. So just take my dad's word for it, I guess. So I think we're going to find out soon. But yes, the Dodgers do need to get Bryce Harper. And that's final. I want Bryce Harper locked up. That makes me want to kiss somebody if that happens. So,
it won't be me.
It won't be you. No, absolutely not. But yeah, so interesting. And now with the Angels, is this more of they don't have a lot of cap space, or are they possibly waiting to trade for Corey Kluber because they need pitching, or what are they doing with this?
First of all, Sean Sargent, I do know about baseball, so you can just shut your mouth right now. Stick to hockey. What's wrong with you? And I do. By the way, people, bring your questions in because we do want to answer those.
Yeah, we'll answer.
Alex Silva did have a question.
It's probably a Yankees question.
Kluber, or maybe one of those other Indian pitchers would be a big boost. Dodgers also.
No, I agree. The problem is they didn't sign anybody else. So, it's. I don't think we can bring in Kluber and Bryce Harper. I think it's more of just, you got to get Bryce Harper at this point. Dodgers still have Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Julio Urias, if I say that name right, are going to be the lead of the rotation. Also, Hyun-Jin Ryu is not a bad starter. So I think their rotation's fine. Go out and add the superstar, please.
Right. And I want to get back to your question about the Angels. I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time.
Yeah.
For the Angels, I think there's a little bit of hesitation with Artie Moreno because, listen, now I'm not comparing these two players because obviously Bryce Harper is better than Josh Hamilton. But the last time that the Angels forked out a boatload of money for players, it was Josh Hamilton and Albert Pujols.
Yeah, not good. Yeah,
those haven't necessarily worked out if you've been following baseball at all, right? So
obviously can't run down the first base.
Obviously, you still have Mike Trout, and you have some other players to work around. But it's maybe not as easy for the Angels to just fork out that $400 million because you never know. It's backfired on them before multiple times, and maybe they're a little hesitant. For the Dodgers, I think they're just spend big. Spend big, win big, and if it doesn't work out, then guess what? 2-3 years down the road, we can just go get another player because we're the Dodgers and we can get whoever we want. The question that I posed to you before we wrap this up is, if I'm Bryce Harper, with spring training starting in a month, I would want to be settled in with the team.
I was thinking that too.
Right? So I would want to get familiar. I want to get into my home. I want to get everything unpacked. I want to start to feel comfortable. I want to get to know my teammates so that when spring training starts, we can kind of just pick things up and go. It's not a new situation. I'm not going into this saying with just a whole new mentality. You know what I mean? I want to be a little bit comfortable with where I am. And so I think the longer that Bryce Harper waits, I think just the more time it's going to take for him to adjust and to get comfortable. So I think that plays a little bit of factor in it as well. Now, obviously, that's not going to hurt him when the regular season starts. But as far as just practice goes and figuring out the city or wherever you're living, I would just want to be a little more comfortable and kind of settled in.
True.
And with things coming up rapidly here, it doesn't seem like that's taking place.
No, and you said it might not affect him in the regular season. Look at Giancarlo Stanton last year. He had a horrible start to the year. And that was kind of that was a trade, so that was a little different. He didn't decide to go to the Yankees. But, with Stanton, he didn't play well. I think it might affect Harper if he's in Dodger Stadium and the crowd is hyped and he starts batting 150 the first month, right? It's going to be a little bit interesting. So, but yeah, Harper, I think he'll make a decision within the next week, if not within the next 2 weeks at worst.
He better?
Yeah.
What's he going to do? Wait until after spring training
starts?
starts?
I mean, look how late J.D. Martinez signed last year, though. So it's not totally impossible, and he led his team to a World Series. So it's not the end of the world, okay? But real quick, I just want to get your take. The Ducks and the Kings are playing awful right now. The Ducks, listen to this, 12 losses in a row. 12 consecutive losses, and the Kings remain in last place in the NHL. What has happened? Because these two teams were perennial Stanley Cup contenders. What do you think has happened to them, and why are they so bad this year? Or at least why have the Ducks been playing so bad lately?
It's because I haven't been watching him. That's why.
Oh, see, okay.
I'm their lucky charm, and I haven't been able.
I wasn't watching the Kings either. So
I haven't been able to watch them. I should be posing this question to you because you are the hockey analyst.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Really, the only thing I know is that the Ducks had a head coaching change, and I know they've had injuries, and so that's played a key role. And then obviously not playing well, but to have 12 losses in a row is kind of inexcusable from that standpoint. But I should be asking you, more of the hockey guru, as far as why these teams. Especially last year that played so well and seemed to play well as the season goes on, they haven't been able to find that spark, and so far they're last and third to last in their respective
with 12
divisions.
straight losses. Yeah. No, I mean, you look at the Kings, their goal differential is 32. That's not good. That means they've given up 32 more goals than they've scored. And watching the games, it seems like that should be more because they score one goal a game. And with the Ducks, I think it's a combination of injuries. In the game last night I watched, because I wanted to give them good luck to win a single game. I'm more of a Kings fan anyways, but I can't stand the hockey teams literally never winning a game every time they play. But with the Ducks, they lost Kessler and Silfverberg during the game. They also have Corey Perry already out, and Cam Fowler was out for most of the season. So they're losing guys. I think it's hard when you have that many injuries to end these streaks because you're just losing players over and over. And I hated that they traded Andrew Cogliano the other day. I thought he was a fan favorite, one of my favorite players to watch in hockey, period. And they traded him away. Kind of maybe not the best idea because the fans might turn on you at that point. But
was that I mean, there's still a lot of time in the season, but was that they didn't get
a great player for him.
Was that like we're maybe waving the white flag, or maybe this is just
possibly
a rebuilding year and we're
no?
Trying
Because here's the thing: they're like one game out of the playoffs. There was essentially one game. They could have been in the playoffs. Well, actually, I think they would have been tied with Minnesota. But they're right there, and even the Kings are like 8 or 9 game points out, which is only 4 or 5 games out of the playoffs. So it's more the West, I think, having a lot of parity in it. But the Dogs, you can't lose 12 in a row. I mean, they win some of these games, they're in the playoffs right now. Just a single 1 or 2 or 3 games. So, and with the Kings, they're losing to some of the worst teams in the league. They're just not playing well, and they have the same roster, so I don't really know what's going on there. I think they just started out weak and continue to be weak. But we do need to move on. We're going to be right back with our first ever Facebook Live edition of Do You Care? So you can see my antics before when I started out, and I'll go a little crazy for it too. So we'll be right back on Facebook Live. We'll be right back on YouTube, and we'll be right back on OC Rock Radio. This is the Cover 2 podcast, once again on OC Rock Radio.
R.J. Barrett, a deep 3, and Chuku, fittingly the ball in his hands as the game ends. Jim Boeheim, another win over the #1 ranked team in the country.
I don't think he'll be the #1 overall pick, but he's going in the first. If you can play quarterback, you're being taken in the first round.
Nope, he's not a first rounder because I'm not talking about his talent. I'm talking about whether or not he wants to play the sport.
Well, we really have no choice but to talk about the Clemson Tigers' trip to the White House. The trip was all set up with just one problem. Because of the longest government shutdown in American history, the White House staff is not at full force, so question loomed, who would cook for this champion football team?
So we went out and we ordered American fast food, paid for by me. Lots of hamburgers, lots of pizza. I think they'd like it better than anything we could give.
We are back on the Cover 2 podcast. We are back on Facebook Live. We're back on YouTube. And it is time for Do You Care? For those who don't know, this is a segment where we give rapid-fire questions to each other, and then we quickly respond. So this will be very, very fast-paced. We try to speak about topics that we previously or that we haven't spoke about yet. So there won't be too many NFL topics in here, or
at least about the
baseball
games that have happened. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Nick, the first question is for you. Do you care that Donald Trump fed Clemson, the national champions, when they went to the White House, with fast food?
You know, I don't, because, you know, it's interesting. Obviously, they have the government shutdown going on. I think we're on the some days.
We're in our third week.
Third week, yeah. So in the 20s in days so far. But Trump decided to feed the Clemson Tigers, who are national champions, like you mentioned, fast food because they did not have a lot of time to plan it since there's not a lot of government officials in the White House, I guess. But, you know, the Clemson players, from what I heard, loved it. They cheered when they saw the food, so I'm not going to care about it that much. You know, let's say a player gets sick or something like that, or the players all go boo and leave the White House. I think that's more where I'm going to care. But I think this is more of a funny issue. This is more of a thing where Trump's being Trump again. He's kind of being, unpresidential or whatever he's been in the past. So, he gives them fast food. But they sure laid it out nicely, and they made it into a thing, and it definitely got Twitter going. So I don't care that much. It was an interesting little story, but it didn't seem like Clemson minded, and it seemed like almost the players enjoyed it more than didn't enjoy it. So nonetheless, Clemson, if the players get sick for next year's season, blame Trump. All right, Jared, you get your first question. Do you care, sticking with college football, that Ohio State backup quarterback Tate Martell has transferred to the U? The Miami Hurricanes.
I do care. And listen, this is something that the NCAA has granted athletes, that they have better access and more of an opportunity to transfer from school to school if they so choose. Now, they have to give a legitimate reason. They can't just say necessarily that they're homesick or anything like that. It has to be school-related, or there has to be an issue athletically, for them to actually be able to transfer. It's actually called the transfer portal that they have to put their names into, and then when they're actually granted access, they can then leave that particular team and conference. And if they transfer to a school that's out of conference, they can immediately play right away.
Yes.
So in saying all of that, Tate Martell realized that Justin Fields, the #1 high school quarterback from a year ago.
Number two,
Trevor
Lawrence was number
who
one.
just transferred from Georgia to Ohio State. Tate Martell realized that he probably will not be getting the starting job. Now, where I disagree with this is that I feel that there's not enough competition going around. It's kind of like players are just saying, oh, okay, another guy's coming in and I'm just going to leave. Like, no one wants to compete. No one wants to say, all right, I'm here. I've been here for a year. I know this system.
Yes.
I can go beat this guy out, right? He's just basically quitting, in a sense, on this team and jumping ship because he thinks, I can just go start at Miami, which I'm sure he can, because Miami has a new head coach, and I do not know if they have necessarily a starting quarterback at this moment.
Well, they were terrible last year, so whoever the starting quarterback was.
So I'm not faulting him for leaving, but what I'm saying, and this is going to all athletes, is where's the competition? Where is okay, someone else is coming in, who cares? I'm going to beat this person out. I'm not going to uproot myself because someone else is coming in. And I think that's the issue that I have, not necessarily with just Tate Martell, but with all of these guys who are just transferring just because, they're not being handed the starting job. Nick, do you care that Kyler Murray has decided to declare for the NFL draft and at the moment not go to spring training with the A's?
Oh, yeah, I care about this. This has a lot, this affects a lot of the teams I follow. Obviously, if he signs with the Oakland A's, later this week, that obviously affects the Angels and who's playing against them and all that stuff. And I've always been more of an MLB apologist. I favor them a little bit because that's what I grew up. My dad played the minor league system and stuff like that. So that would be very interesting. And then him declaring for the NFL draft is more interesting because then a bunch of people decided to act like the Cardinals were going to draft Kyler Murray at number 1, which is not going to happen, okay? And Adam Schefter, for example, came out with some reports that said the Cardinals might draft Kyler Murray, which is not good journalism. That is rumor journalism, which is not real, so that's not good on him for doing that. But, it stemmed from comments that Cliff Kingsbury made in October when he was still the head coach of Texas Tech, because I believe he had previously had some connection to Kyler Murray in the past, maybe at Texas A&M, or maybe he had helped recruit him. He said that, he drafted number 1 if he had the chance. Well, now that he's the head coach of the Cardinals, that's not necessarily true. The Cardinals don't need a quarterback. They have Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen is better than Kyler Murray. Okay, let's not try to... Kyler Murray, if he works out, he's 1 in a million, right? He's Russell Wilson, but not even that. He's even more of a speedster. So they're not going to draft him number 1, but it does make it interesting because by going to the NFL draft, he still can choose the MLB. If he went back to college, that, I believe, breached his MLB contract completely. So then he would not have a contract with the A's, and he still could get drafted again in the MLB by a different team or something along those lines. Now that he chose the NFL draft, he now still can pick the MLB. Declaring for the NFL draft doesn't even mean you need to necessarily get drafted. But what he more than likely will do is go to the NFL. And because he asked for the A's for $15 million, or at least that was the rumor, and said that he needed to be on the 40-man roster. So I don't think the A's are going to do that because Kyler Murray is not ready to do that. And so I believe he will end up going to the NFL. I do believe he'll end up getting drafted, unfortunately, in the first round, which he does deserve, a lot like Johnny Manziel. And his football career probably won't work out, and he might end up playing baseball. But I think he probably should have signed with baseball because baseball, you don't have as much of a risk for injury. You don't have, the height requirement thing kind of meaning anything as far as being a quarterback. So I've taken a lot of time on this answer, but I know this is a big thing. And Deion Sanders also said that he should have chose baseball because of his height and other stuff like that. So I'm going to go with Deion, who did play 2 sports. By the way, and did the same thing. So Kyler Murray, it's going to be interesting. Has not declared officially that he doesn't want to play in the MLB anymore, so we're still waiting on that. Probably next podcast, unless something happens while we're doing the podcast live, which you'll find out about. But we'll find out next podcast what he truly does. I believe, though, he will go to the NFL. Real quick, what do you think he'll do?
He's going to go to the NFL.
Yeah, I believe
he
so.
basically said, I want my guaranteed money up front.
Yeah.
From the Oakland Athletics, and if I don't get that, then I'm going to go to the NFL because in the short term, he can make more money with football.
True.
In the long term,
Especially if he gets drafted in the
with
first round.
injuries and just all of that combined, he more than likely can make a lot more money in Major League Baseball. But I think right now he's just focused on the now and wanting to, put some dollars in his pocket. So I can't fault him for entering the NFL draft. You're right. He probably is projected as a first-round pick. Doesn't mean he will. If a team does get him, they have to understand that he's more of a project.
True.
And if you expect him to come out as a rookie and kind of be the leader of your franchise, I'm not so sure that's the right attitude to have. I think if you are drafting him, whether it's in the first round, second round, third round, I think you need to have another quarterback that you can at least start for the beginning of the year. Let Kyler Murray sit back and learn, and then bring him in either later on in the season or sit him for a full season and wait till 2020. I think that would be the better route to go.
I agree. Jared, here's your next question. Do you care that Adam Gase is the new head coach of the New York Jets?
No, I do not care. I think the best thing that came out of this whole this whole topic is the fact that Adam Gase looked like he was on drugs basically in his news conference when he was being introduced as the head coach. He was staring around like he was looking at a fly or something, like an alien or something.
It's so weird.
And he looked very distraught. This is an interesting hire because it's within the division. And for those who don't know, Adam Gase was formerly the head coach with the Miami Dolphins. I believe it was for 3 years. The Dolphins were never really relevant in that entire time. And really, when you're looking at the AFC East, if you are the Bills, the Jets, or the Dolphins, your main objective every single year is to beat the New England Patriots. I think that's even above winning the division because the Patriots have been so dominant for over a decade that they are the juggernaut. And if you can't get past the Patriots, you more than likely will not win the division. So for Adam Gase, he gets to stay in the AFC East to a team that he probably knows very well from playing them twice a year. I would say that he is, he's known as a quarterback guru. So I think what enticed him was being able to work with Sam Darnold and grow with him. The Jets do have a good defense, something, a lot of good pieces to work on with Leonard Williams.
Young guys, too.
Right. Jamal Adams. So they have some good pieces on defense to work on. Offensively is where they really struggle, from the offensive line to not really having many weapons on the outside. So this is definitely another project that Adam Gase is going into. It failed the first time when he was with Miami, and we'll see what happens this time in New York.
True.
Nick, do you care that James Harden has scored 30-plus points in 17 straight games?
I don't because I'm not a Rockets fan, but this is a fantastic little streak he's on. He's kind of Kobe-ing, is what I would say with this. 17 straight games, 30 points. Wilt Chamberlain holds the record for most 30-point games in a row at 20. So James Harden is close. And I believe they play the Lakers on Saturday, so we might see him try to extend this streak or possibly even tie it. I don't know how many games they had before that. But, no, I don't care because, Harden's Harden and stars in the NBA will do things, but we all know Golden State is kind of, the best team. But nonetheless, James Harden, good for him. He's a local guy, came from LA, went to ASU. So, nonetheless, very, very interesting. All right, Jared, last question of Do You Care? Do you care that the Syracuse Orange, who were unranked, defeated number 1 Duke the other night?
That was a
in
huge,
college basketball.
Right. It was a huge win for Syracuse. I don't necessarily care because it's a regular season game. It's the beginning of conference play necessarily, so Duke has a lot of time to make up this loss. This was a much bigger win for Syracuse as it was a loss for Duke. Really, Duke had 2 losses in this game. They not only lost the game, but they lost Trey Jones, who is not only their starting guard, but he's arguably one of the best defenders in college basketball, if you look at the stats. So he had, I believe it was an ACL sprain in his shoulder, an AC joint sprain in his shoulder. So he's out indefinitely. There's no timetable on when he will come back. And as you saw, Duke started out on a 12-0 run to begin the game. Trey Jones got injured, and from then on, Syracuse basically took control. Duke only lost by 4 points, so it seemed like it was a close game, but in reality, Syracuse kind of had a stranglehold on this from the get-go. So Duke is going to have to find a way to play much better defense. Now, they have the guys. They have Zion Williams, and they have a whole other nucleus of 4- and 5-star talents that can do the job, but it's going to take a full team as opposed to one shutdown defender who's going to be able to lock down the other opponent's best player. So more than this loss to Syracuse, I think the loss of Trey Jones is really going to affect Duke going forward, at least for the next couple weeks until Jones can come back and regain his starting role.
Yeah, and real quick, Do You Care is over. I wanted to mention, I just saw this come out. Tiger Woods is returning to the PGA Tour.
Tiger Woods, yeah.
I believe this weekend or next weekend at Torrey Pines. So whenever the Torrey Pines tournament is, he's coming back. So the world will converge on golf once again. And I believe Tiger does live in San Diego, so that does make sense. He usually does the Torrey Pines event. So, yeah, that was Do You Care? Hey, if you're on the radio right now, don't forget to come back because we're going to be predicting the conference championship games between the Rams and the Saints and the Patriots and Chiefs. So if you're on Facebook Live, I'm sure we'll just keep you on live right there so you can watch us during the break. But if you're listening on the radio and listening on YouTube, we're going to go to a quick break. But conference championship games is the biggest part of the podcast coming up next. So come back here on OC Rock Radio.
Through the middle, trying to get into the end zone is the other Williams, and he does. Darrell Williams for the touchdown. Game-sealing drive.
And watch who it is that pushes him over the goal line. Mahomes going to jump in there and give him a little.
Get this off with a 2-minute warning. A little surprise. Foles back, throws. Intercepted. Went right through Jeffrey's hands. It's Lattimore. Right through Alshon Jeffrey's hands. And Lattimore's second pick of the game. And the Saints looking to move on.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio on YouTube and Facebook Live for the first time ever. We're finishing off the podcast here with about 23 minutes of predicting the conference championship games. Rams, Saints, Patriots, Chiefs, kind of what everybody wanted, to be honest. We got the two best matchups we could have. And these are going to be incredibly tough games for me to pick. I don't know if you have your picks ready yet, but we're going to analyze this through and through, and we're going to do our best to give you advice. For me, I have been 8 for 9 on predictions, including the national championship and all the NFL playoffs. So if you want to listen to my take literally, you might win some money. But I also could lose these next two because these are by far the two hardest picks I've made. So nonetheless, we are going to start with it. Conference championship games, we're going to start with the early game. We're just going to do it by chronological order. The NFC Championship game, the Rams in New Orleans for the second time this season. Earlier this season, I believe it was 45-42. Saints with the win over the Rams. The Rams had to come back from a lot in that game. Were able to get close, but the Saints in one of those typical Rams shootouts were able to win the game. So that's what happened earlier. Once again, we are in the Superdome. The line right now, New Orleans by 3.5. Jared, what's your take on this game? You don't have to make a prediction necessarily yet, but just kind of analyze what you expect to happen in this football game.
Yeah, no, like I mentioned earlier in the show when we were talking about the Saints and how they beat the Eagles and how the Saints came off to a sluggish start at the beginning of that game. They went down 14-0 early. That will not happen again. And I think one of the coolest things that head coach Sean Payton did before these playoffs started, for those who don't know, Sean Payton went into the locker room before last week's game with $225,000 in cash. Let me say that again. Yeah. $225,000 in cash.
That's cash.
And a Super Bowl ring. He was surrounded by bodyguards, security guards, and he basically went into the locker room, surrounded all of his players, and he said, y'all want this? And by the way, that $250,000 cash, that is the bonus money that every single player would get if they won the Super Bowl. So if that isn't a little extra motivation for you, I don't know what is. And he basically said, y'all want this money, go effing win 3 games. So the Saints won the first. They got 2 more to go. And listen, they've got a tough task with the Rams coming in, obviously, with their dominant performance, beating the Cowboys last week. Really, I think this game will end just like it did the first time these two teams met. I think it's going to be very, very close, high scoring. I can see it in the 30s or the 40s again. Both of these defenses are mediocre, especially in their pass and their secondary. So I think Drew Brees and Jared Goff are both going to light it up. And I can see it coming down to who has the ball last, right? Or which defense is going to show up. I mean, we saw the Rams defense stop the Cowboys' rushing attack last week. And we saw the Saints from the second quarter on of the Eagles game basically dominate the Eagles in all facets. So which defense will really step up and make a play? Because as of right now, I think both of these offenses are legit. They're scary. And when they get going, they're somewhat unstoppable. So that is my question to you, Nick. Which defense do you have more confidence in?
You know what? That's a hard question to ask. It's more about with me. It's actually more about what offense I think is better and what offense I trust. And I'm going to go back to my old adage that I usually do on this podcast or on Twitter. I think the better quarterback is going to win this game. And you looked at the divisional games and the conference championship are completely different because the divisional games, especially when the 1 and 2 seeds advance, they had an extra week to prepare, right? And in the Rams' case, they kind of had 3 extra weeks to prepare because they played the Cardinals and 49ers to end the season. So they were really probably looking at the Cowboys. They were probably looking at the Cowboys tape one day out of the week going, okay, or they're looking at all the other playoff teams they could possibly play, and then when they knew it was more than likely going to be the Cowboys, they said, let's torch them on the run, and they did that and were able to defeat them. But not to try to take shots at you because there was no reason to do that, but nonetheless, I think it's going to come down. I agree with you. I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think it will be a little more low scoring, maybe in the 20s or the low 30s. Maybe 30. My prediction is going to be 31-28 Saints. I just think Drew Brees is going to do enough to get them over the hump, kind of like he did in the game against the Eagles and like he did in a lot of games. It seems like Drew Brees' season, kind of. And the Rams have improved, and they're looking a little bit better, but they're kind of just the team that was thrown together before the season. A lot of all-stars, and a lot of times it isn't working. You look at the Miami Heat in their first year together, they did not win a championship, right? Now, I'm not even saying the Rams are going to get there, but a lot of times when you throw a bunch of personalities out there, and I made the comments about Marcus Peters earlier on this podcast, when you throw a lot of these guys together, a lot of times it might not work out in the biggest game. And I do think the Saints are more of a team. They've gelled. They have a lot of the same players they've had. Michael Thomas is arguably the best receiver in the league. Drew Brees is arguably a top 3 quarterback in the league. So I think that the Saints defense will do enough, even though they lost Sheldon Rankins. I think they'll do enough as far as aerial stoppage of Jared Goff. And I think they'll do enough to try to stop that. They won't let fat C.J. Anderson get 130 yards like he did against Cowboys. Gurley might do well, but there's going to be some scoring, and I think they'll do enough. They'll stop the rush enough, and they'll make Jared Goff make mistakes, and that's what will get them a win. I say the Saints win 31-28, but they could win by a touchdown. It will be a 1-score game, but I'm going with the New Orleans Saints to make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, sorry, Dan. Rams aren't going any further.
What did Dan say? Let's see.
He said Rams are America's new team.
That's not true, but the Cowboys are out. He was correct about that.
He was
correct about that.
You're half right, but still. Get out of here, man. All right, so there's 2 things that I want to kind of go over a little bit. Number one, and I think I've noticed a little more of this theme going on in the playoffs, and I like it. I love it. Teams are going for it more on 4th down. You saw the Cowboys in the first quarter. They were on like their own 35, and they went for it, basically saying, this is obviously win or go home, and we have faith in our offense more than we do in our defense, even though the Cowboys had a good defense. It didn't look like it last week. The Rams went for it a couple times on 4th down, and we all know that the Rams, even with their special teams, with Hecker and their punter, they like to do fake punts and go for it on 4th down all the time. So I saw it with the Saints last week as well. We all know that the Patriots are willing to do it with Tom Brady. I like teams that are kind of going for it more and not necessarily just punting the ball away and trying to play field position. This is for all the marbles here. So I expect to see some more 4th down attempts to be made in this game, especially by the Rams, right? The Rams are on the road. They're in the Superdome, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. You have a great special teams unit. If it's like 4th and 3, 4th and 4, I can definitely see it's a fake scenario situation. If it's 4th and 1, I'm putting my offensive line out there and saying, Todd Gurley, go get that 1st down, go win us this game. So I really don't see I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of punting going on in this game unless it's like a 4th and 10 or something like that. But if it's close, I think both of these head coaches are gunslingers. They like to take chances, and they've shown it, and I think we're going to continue to see more of that. What do you say?
He said the Cowboys went home. He said
and they went home.
Dan says the Cowboys went home on Facebook
right.
Live.
Yeah, they did. Well, they'll be back next year. The Cowboys play the Rams next year again. It's in Dallas. Dan, if you want to go to that game, we can get tickets for that, and we can go. We'll see who wins that game.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other thing. This is kind of a funny topic here. I want to see Marcus Peters, who said he wanted to eat some gumbo with Sean Payton. I want to see if he can show up and back up his words, because obviously in that last performance he got torched by Michael Thomas. So like we mentioned earlier, Aqib Talib is back for the Rams, so they will be able to kind of split their duties with Michael Thomas and some of those other receivers. But I want to see Marcus Peters will show up, because he obviously made a name for himself when he his first 2.5 years in Kansas City. He led the league in interceptions, and really ever since he's been with LA, he hasn't necessarily made enough plays or kind of covered the stat sheet. He hasn't had the interceptions or really just made enough plays. And I think that's more towards the system that Wade Phillips and this defense plays. So I'm not going to sit here and put all the blame on him. But listen, man, you got to back up your words, right? You came out and you were heated in that press conference after that loss to the Rams earlier in the year. This is your opportunity to make up for it. I'm not so sure he will, but I want to see him be more competitive, not get beat on double moves, because that's what he's known to do, is get beat a lot in the secondary.
Yeah, no, Marcus Peters, like I said earlier, he's a big part of this whole game, and I think it will come down to what him and Aqib Talib can do against Michael Thomas, because you obviously have the run game, which has two solid running backs, in Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, so they're always a threat. But if you can take Michael Thomas out of the game, then there's really no passing threat. Tre'Quan Smith is, he's a rookie. He's and
he's a very good rookie, by the way.
Very good rookie, but he's not a superstar. He's not Odell.
No,
he's not Michael
but
Thomas.
He's reliable. I guarantee you, Drew Brees trusts him.
Not as reliable as Michael Thomas.
No, of course. But if you're going to double or triple team Michael Thomas, Tre'Quan Smith is going to be open, and he's proven this year that he can make big plays.
But I do think if Michael Thomas gets stopped, that is definitely an advantage for the Rams, obviously.
You're welcome, Alex Silva, by the way, who has Tre'Quan Smith in his fantasy underrated player. I just want to give Alex Silva
shout out
to
Alex. But, and then looking at this game, I think you look at both their playoff games from last week. They both won the games because they controlled possession. They controlled the ball. They didn't allow Dak to get back the ball, and they didn't allow Nick Foles to get back the ball. So I think that's really what it's going to come down to in this game. And we're talking about who has last possession. Well, that literally is it. Let's say the Rams have the last possession and they're down by 3. There's more than likely, I think they're either going to tie or win the game. The Saints have the last possession and they're down by 3. More than likely, they're going to tie or win the game. So I think if one team can do another 11.5-minute drive, or the Rams can double the possession game like they did against the Cowboys, that is really who's going to win this game, because the defenses are good, not great, and you can kind of dominate these defenses, to be honest. So I think that's who it's going to come down to, but I'm going to go with the Vegas line. I think Saints win by 3, 31-28, and Drew Brees gets to his second Super Bowl ever.
I think I agree with you. The Saints win 38-31. I think it'll be a little more high scoring than you think. Daniel Keene had a question. He asks, does Drew Brees retire if he wins the Super Bowl?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think there's nothing else for him to prove if he wins the Super Bowl. I mean, this will be his second Super Bowl, one with New Orleans. He came back from that horrific shoulder injury in San Diego and basically got a second opportunity with New Orleans. I don't see what else he would need to prove. He's the all-time leading, is it touchdowns by quarterback or passing yards?
Well, I know
he leads one of those.
The touchdowns for sure, because he had that touchdown Monday Night Football. So
right,
I know
right.
that.
So that's what it is.
But that probably will be, if Brees were to retire, that would more than likely be broken by Tom Brady. So that's not gonna. I know they're really close.
No, but I just mean for right now, like he could retire saying that at one point I was the all-time leading touchdown passer.
I mean, Drew Brees, pound for pound, might be the best quarterback ever because of his height. Just saying that right now. So you can get him in the Super Bowl. That's going to be good. Not that being the LA team with a lot of stars isn't good, but to have that Drew Brees, second Super Bowl attempt, his last attempt more than likely, I think that'd be really entertaining. That's not why I'm picking them. I just think the better quarterback beats the worst quarterback when the teams are very similar. So I'm going to go with Drew Brees.
Just quickly, if the Saints do win, they don't have to go too far, right? They play Atlanta once a year
Atlanta
already.
is not far away either.
No, so I think it would definitely be a home field crowd and home field advantage for the Saints if they do make it to Atlanta for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, especially if they play a team like the Patriots or something like that, who kind of are used to being in the Super Bowl. I think those fans are going to be less to spend that money since they see it every year.
Right.
But all right, we're going to move on to the Chiefs and Patriots. Also, one quick thing is that the Rams. It's a 4.5-hour flight to New Orleans. New Orleans is pretty far away from here. So don't think that might not affect them. A little bit of jet lag if they don't get there early enough and having to their game plan and not practice as much as they probably want.
If I'm Sean McVay, I'm leaving on Friday.
Yeah, you have to.
I don't leave on
But then
Saturday.
you don't get to practice as much either. You miss a day with the flights.
No, you don't. It's fine because you leave on Friday. You leave like early to midday Friday, and then you have a walkthrough or something on Saturday. But you give your players.
I'm just saying, watch out for that to potentially be a problem, since West Coast teams often have to travel a lot further than Central teams or East Coast teams, because a lot of teams are close to each other. But all right, we need to move on. Patriots and Saints. We got 10 minutes left
Patriots
in this
and Chiefs.
podcast. What did I say?
You said Patriots and Saints.
Oh,
you were predicting a potential Super Bowl
Chiefs.
matchup is what you were doing.
Yeah, I will not give my prediction till the end, but that could be a Super Bowl matchup. So I didn't mean to say that, though. Patriots and Chiefs in Kansas City. Like we said earlier, these are going to be frigid conditions around zero. Not 0 Celsius, 0 Fahrenheit. So it is going to be cold. It's going to be a different style of football. Probably a lot of running, not as much of the passing, and with two teams that passed a lot either during the regular season or the Patriots in their last game against the Chargers. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a completely different game. I'll give my opinion first since you gave your opinion on the other game first. The line is Kansas City by 3, so similar to New Orleans. They are at home. You have New England, who everyone thought, like Tom Brady, kind of sucked going in this game and thought the Chargers had a real chance to beat them. That did not happen. The Patriots mauled them, beat the crap out of the Los Angeles Chargers with a fantastic game plan at home. I believe after that win, they are 9-0 at home, but they're not playing the game at home this weekend. They're playing in Kansas City, and on the road they were 3-5. Okay, they did beat Kansas City way earlier in the year. High-scoring game, kind of was one of those games where whoever got the ball last ended up winning. That is what happened, so I'm not going to put that game too much into the
And it was at home.
Yeah, it was at home. It was one of their undefeated wins. So this team is completely different on the road than at home. They also don't get, like we said with the 1-2 seeds, they don't get to game plan as much because you had to game plan for the Chargers. Chargers were a legitimate team. And so I think with this one, I think the Chiefs definitely have an advantage. Staying home, getting used to that frigid weather. Not that Boston isn't cold either, but still, this is a whole different animal. And if the Kansas City Chiefs are sitting there getting used to that, maybe even possibly practicing in that weather one of the days before the games, I think they have a clear advantage. And that is why I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs are going to find a way to win this game. Like I said, it feels like Drew Brees' year. It feels like the Kansas City Chiefs' year. This feels like back in 2015 when the Denver Broncos were able to pull it out at home against the New England Patriots. The Patriots just don't seem like a Super Bowl this team this year. They were able to beat the Chargers. That wasn't totally out of the idea. We all both picked the Patriots last week. I just think the Chiefs have too much firepower, and their defense will step up like they did last week. So I'm going to go Chiefs over the Patriots. The Chiefs making the Super Bowl and it being the New Orleans Saints versus the Kansas City Chiefs in Atlanta. That's my prediction. If I had to throw out a score, I'm going to go 21-17 Kansas City.
All right. So for me, I'm just going to flat out and say it. Chiefs are winning this game. The Patriots, like you mentioned, because of all the stats that you just gave out, and like I said this before the playoffs started, the Patriots need to get home field advantage throughout. And they did not.
Yeah.
Now that they have to travel to Kansas City, right? You mentioned it. They're 3-5 on the road in the regular season, and they just don't look like the same team on the road for whatever reason. I don't know why. They're just not comfortable traveling. I know they don't have the same exact team as they've had in the past. But guess what? You still have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And if I know one thing about Bill Belichick, it's that he's had his eye on Kansas City this whole time. When you're now going up against the number 1 seed, not only in division but in the conference, you have to somewhat project and look a little bit forward. So obviously last week the Patriots were mainly focused on the Chargers, but whether it was Bill Belichick himself or some, kind of lower members of his staff, someone was already scouting for the Chiefs, right? You have to. That's how it is. You can't go into this with only having 5 or 6 days of game planning. You have to already have some type of preparation started. In saying all that, I think, like you mentioned, I think this feels like it's the Chiefs' time, right? They have home field. They deserve to have home field throughout. I think the rest of having that week off last week really helped Tyreek Hill, who was nursing an ankle injury, and it also helped Sammy Watkins, who was nursing some injuries right there. So you have Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and then kind of out of nowhere, you had Damian Williams, right? Who has kind of been bounced around from team to team throughout his early NFL career. And last week, he ran for like $130 and 3 touchdowns. Or I think like a couple touchdowns. So This kid right now is stepping up in the Kareem Hunt absence and really making it look like Kareem Hunt was never there.
Absolutely.
Right? So their running game is still as prolific as ever, along with that ridiculously good passing game. Now, like you mentioned, the elements and the weather are going to affect how much both of these teams pass. But I think Patrick Mahomes, I'm not putting anything past this kid. The way that he can throw sidearm and he throws on the move and he throws no-look passes. I don't expect anything less than a 250 to 300-yard game with a couple touchdowns.
Even in the frigid cold, too. Yeah.
And I think the Chiefs, at the end of the day, pull one out. This won't be a type of game where it's whoever has the ball last wins. I think the Chiefs, as the third quarter and the fourth quarter go on, will kind of pull this game away. In the first half, I think it's going to be very, very close. Both teams are going to be a little timid, trying to figure each other out, figure out what works and what doesn't in these temperatures. And as the second half goes on, I think the Chiefs, with that home field advantage, will be able to pull away. Make no mistake, even though the Chiefs play technically outside, it's actually been recorded. The Chiefs have the loudest stadium in the NFL. So that will be a huge factor for Tom Brady and that offense. They're not going to be able to hear each other. They're going to have hand-sign communication, because Tom Brady, whatever he says, there's no way that he will be able to communicate that to his players. So that's going to play a role in this game, and that's something that you're going to have to watch for.
It's going to be interesting. Gregory Yosenik says that he believes it's going to be Chiefs-Rams Part 2 in the Super Bowl, so we have a different opinion right there.
I would love to see that.
I would love to see... I just don't want to see the Patriots, to be honest. I think we all can agree we don't want to see the Patriots. A lot of Patriots fans are a little annoying and stuff like that, but... and they've been in there 2 months, so I can agree Chiefs-Rams would be a good game. I'm not complaining, but prediction-wise, I'm going to go Saints-Chiefs. Just a couple other things. The over-under for this Patriots-Chiefs game is 56. I'd bet the under. This is going to be a super cold game. And the last game that was around 0 temperatures in the playoffs ended up, I believe it was 9-6. So,
there you go.
Maybe bet the under. I would expect that over-under to start lowering a little bit. But also, these teams relatively healthy coming into this game, too. Right. The Rams obviously didn't have anybody on their injury list, and the Saints are missing Sheldon Rankin. So that is one thing right there. One thing I want to mention about the flight for the Rams and the to New Orleans, that game is also technically a 10 o'clock start in New Orleans. Let me think about that.
So it's noon?
Or a 10 o'clock start, in LA. So that's tough. And I know the Cardinals have had a lot of trouble with that. But nonetheless, those are a couple little added things. We wanted to mention something real quick before we mentioned we went off the air. Jalen Hurts has transferred to Oklahoma while we've been doing the podcast, so we probably will more than likely talk about that next week. But yes, so the Alabama quarterback, they do not have their backup anymore. He's going to Oklahoma, so Oklahoma will have 3 consecutive possible Heisman candidates, to be honest. I don't know if Jalen Hurts, but I'm just saying he's better than whoever they would have had. I forget what the guy's name was. But, our Super Bowl prediction, both of us got Chiefs and Saints. We will not make our Super Bowl pick, obviously, because this game hasn't happened yet. We don't even know who's going to win. But Jared and I were 4 for 4 last week. I'm 7 for 8. So trust our opinions somewhat when we can take the bias out of it and not pick, for our own teams and stuff like that. But nonetheless, Jared, I'm going to have the music play right here in 1 second. That you can hear right there if you're listening on OC Rock Radio. Fun podcast. First time ever on Facebook Live. We still will be on YouTube. Hopefully to have the video up there as well.
Oh, yeah, we will.
A little snafu in the beginning, but nonetheless, Jared, great podcast today. Yeah. Once again, we got
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for everybody that tuned in on Facebook Live and OC Rock Radio. Saints Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That's our prediction. For Nick Nenad,
I'm Jared Smith.
This has been the Cover 2 podcast.